Today, it's Ken Block on Shakedown via Skype as he starts his 19-stop 2014 racing tour on the tarmac, the dirt, and in the air, because he jumps that Ford Fiesta quite a bit. And this is the first of 4 shows to go on Shakedown. On the March 28th show, I hope I don't have to tell you what the hell I just meant by what I just said. But back to Mr. Block. The last 2 times he raced, he's won. In Las Vegas at the 2013 Global RallyCross season ender, and to start 2014 with a win at the 700-acre wood Rally America. And I say 700 because Ken has won the 100-acre thing 7 damn times. Today we're going to talk to Ken Block about many topics, like the differences in how Ken actually drives the cars in the different type of racing that he's doing in that 19-event 2014 gig. He's racing Global RallyCross, World RallyCross, World Rally Championship, Rally America Stage Rally, and of course, his Gymkhana GRID runs. Plus, like those shakedown track downs of last year, when we talked to guys like SRT Viper racer Tommy Kendall and Corvette Racing's Doug Feehan, we're going to get Ken's point of view on other news in the racing world. Like Porsche launching their 919 hybrid LMP1 and 911 RSR GT Le Mans cars, and how the graphics that they put out got way too many of you people freaking disappointed in how they looked. Well, race car graphics are a big deal to the Ken Block Hoonigan Racing vibe, so let's talk graphic design with one of the best, Ken Block. And there's other stuff that I'd like to hear about what Ken thinks. Traditional racing versus not, how sponsors think about racing, where they spend their dollars, and get Ken's thoughts on creativity in racing. Plus, I want his thoughts on the bias of Hollywood now that Oscars are over and why the Oscars never give him an award for his Gymkhana films, because apparently he's the Leo DiCaprio of race car movie making. Ken, thanks for your time. I know you're, frankly, all over the world. Where are you right now, actually?
I'm at my home here in Park City, actually. I guess right now I'm in my team headquarters, Hoonigan Racing, just outside of Park City.
And this is one of the few days that you're not running around the globe. But let's start a little bit from getting into the 2014 Hoonigan Racing schedule, which, quite frankly, I look at it like this is the perfect racer guy because you've built your own collection of events and put together your own schedule. You're not really beholden to one particular series. It seems like, well, we're doing 19 events. Tell me if I've got this right. 19 events. 2 of them are Rally America. We'll talk about 100 Acre in a minute. 10 Global RallyCross. Sounds like the whole season there. 3 World RallyCross. 1 WRC race. And then 3 kind of Gymkhana GRID events or demos. Is that pretty much the season you've assembled for yourself?
Yes. And it's quite a fun mix of different events. Some of it that's sort of driven by what my sponsors want me doing. Some of it's driven by stuff I want to do. And then on top of all that stuff, too, there's a bunch of fun sort of marketing things that I'm doing, like Gymkhana 7, and I just was in Barcelona last week doing something for Castrol. So it's really quite a unique mix of things that I do, and I'm really stoked on the position that I've been able to put myself into and have a great set of sponsors that want me to go do all this stuff. So I really am quite lucky to be in the position I am in the world of motorsports.
There is no question. And actually, I'm gonna riff off the start of 14 because I think we've all seen the video from the last Rally America 13 event, and I'm glad that everyone's safe on that. But you kind of rebounded from that with a win at Global RallyCross. If I recall, you've always talked about being quick, P1 in terms of qualifying, fastest laps, but you finally got the win. And then in 14, you kicked off your Rally America thing with that 700 acres win. That's my joke, because you've, 7 times you've won that thing?
Yeah.
So what made the difference? What got you over the hump? And what makes you such a sustaining winner in Rally America?
Well, the thing for me is I've worked really hard over the years to become the best driver that I can. And what I've been able to do in GRC really kind of shows what I'm able to do with the car and setup and that I have a great team behind me. You know, being fastest qualifier last year meant a lot to me because that's when we're out on the track by ourselves. We set our own times, and then that kind of sets our, placings in the semis and then hopefully into the finals. So I was able to prove my speed last year. The problem is the first turn in GRC of the finals last year was quite a mess, and I was getting really the brunt of sort of all the dirty work that was happening in that first turn. So I had a good season, ended up third overall, but really didn't get my first maiden win until that final race. So, like I said, though, I've been very happy with where I've been able to go as a driver. I'm really proud of the fact of, being the fastest qualifier last year. Plus, in the hunts last year for the Rally America title, but had the incident that took me out, there at the final race, and that's rally. That's the way it is. But rebounded and got back in the car for the first stage rally of my year this year, which was 100 Acre Wood, and was able to really dominate that event. So, I'm really happy about where I sit and what I'm doing with the car, and really look forward to getting out there and racing the rest of this year. I feel really confident. I've basically got 2 wins in a row under my belt, and a bunch of wins last year, and a bunch of first place qualifying. So I'm really stoked and looking forward to hopefully a really good year this year.
So two questions about driving. Number one, do you feel that there's anything that you're doing different? I'll use as a segue. Dale Jr. made a big deal about how he would approach things like the Daytona 500 one way, then he turned his mindset over and just went for it and won the race. You've had success, but it seems like maybe we're at a new level. You're 2 for 2 coming out of what you started to do. Is there anything different you're doing in terms of driving these cars now?
Well, I think part of it is maturity.
Okay.
I've been racing now for 10 years, and when I got in a rally car for the first time, I loved sliding it around and jumping it and driving it as aggressive as I possibly could, because to me that was rally. That's how I watched rally as a kid. That's what they did, and as I've gotten more experience under my belt, I've figured out where and how to go faster, and that it's always, it's always a learning experience, and not every day does it. Someone that looks like they're the fastest always is the fastest. Does that make sense? Sometimes overdriving is actually much slower, which is why I enjoy the Gymkhana stuff, because I get to overdrive for fun. But yeah, that's really the biggest thing for me in the past couple of years is, learning much more of a car feel, and knowing when to push and how to push, and when and where to take risks. Especially at GRC, you really got to figure out the tracks, and then figure out where you can actually really take the risks to get time. So a lot of that's just maturity, and actually racing in the WRC was just an amazing experience for me. And I did that because I wanted to push myself to the next level, and it genuinely has done that. Last year I only did one event. I had no testing before it, and to be able to go out and get 7th overall in a WRC event against the best rally drivers on the planet, it feels pretty good. I wish I could have done a full season with all the testing there one day, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. But that whole experience of going and racing that has just made me so much better of a driver.
Well, I'm going to get to my second question, but not to bounce around, but just to be clear for everyone. Mexico is this weekend. You've done that before, but schedule became the conflict of doing it. And you are going to do WRC in Spain. Is that what I got?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the WRC for me is just something I love to go do it, but it's hard to compare to the guys that are at the top level when you only do a couple events and don't do all the testing and all that stuff. So really for me nowadays, it's just a fun thing for me to go do once or twice or 3 times a year, whatever I can fit in the schedule. But really my main emphasis nowadays is RallyCross. But I'm disappointed this year. I actually love the Mexican events. It's just one of the best WRC events in the world. The atmosphere and the countryside there and the roads is just amazing. But I've had a couple PR things that I've had to do last week and this week that just prevented me from making it this year. but we were able to fit in Spain later in the year into the schedule.
Well, I'm going to get pounded on the internet for this comment, but I think professional auto racing is really like professional prize fighting and maybe wrestling from the standpoint of you've got to pick your competition, you've got to pick your events to really manage your career, manage your success. So dropping yourself in the deep end of WRC is great for learning, but at some point in time, you got to, as you said, recognize there's all these dollars, there's all this time, there's all this testing, and if you're not giving yourself a fair shot, what are we doing? The other question I wanted to ask you about driving is, in these different categories from stage rally to global rallycross, do you drive the car differently? I know that sounds like a naive question, so please give it some context, but do you drive the cars differently?
Yes. The basic car that I drive, the Ford Fiesta, it's basically the same chassis and setup for Gymkhana, RallyCross, and stage rally. So when I get in the car, the steering wheel's in the same place, the shifter is in the same place, the computer is the same. It's very nice for me to have the same basic chassis and setup to get into for all these different disciplines. But the engine setup and the delivery of the power, the suspension setup, all that is different between these different things. And we've been doing it now long enough that we have the setups for those things quite dialed. But 650 horsepower on the tarmac for rallycross is quite different than 350 horsepower with a gravel setup out on the dirt. So it genuinely takes a different approach, a different feel. And, in rallycross, especially like qualifying, we're battling for tenths and hundredths of the second. So I have to be just absolutely precise around 8 or 10 corners. Whereas with stage rally, we're out on, 10-mile roads where, if I mess up one corner, well, I can hopefully make that back up in the next corner or the following corner. So you got to average your mistakes and your perfection over a much longer range, so you have a little bit more leeway to kind of adjust the speed. And then Gymkhana, of course, depending on if I'm doing demos or competition or a video, that setup is all completely different. But it really is quite fun sort of, mastering those different setups, really focusing in on what makes sense and really learning every time I get in the car so that I can be better and better every race.
I know the political answer would be, hey, they're all a challenge, but which of the events in your 19 schedule do you look at most as standing out as special to you?
That's a tough question.
Sorry.
Because I have a good variety of stuff this year. I mean, the 100-acre wood one that we just had that I just won for the 7th time, that one's really special to me. Yeah. I just love those roads. And the fact that I've won it so many times, it's just cool to go there and have that challenge. The first GRC race we have this year is actually in Barbados.
I was going to ask you about this.
It's actually somehow in concert with a Top Gear live show also. So
Never
I get to go to Barbados. I get to vacation a little bit before the event. I get to race my car, and I get to hang out with the Top Gear guys. So that's looking to be a very good event too. So, and then if we have X Games and I have WRC Spain and Monza with Valentino Rossi as a teammate, I have some cool stuff this year.
Whoa. What's that all about? You caught me on. I didn't catch that research. What's the one with Valentino?
Oh, well, Valentino Rossi does the Monza rally sprint every year because it's late November, early December. It's after his season is all done. So he, in coordination with Monster and Ford, takes a Ford Fiesta WRC car and races that event. And he does well in it every year. He's got a lot of talent, got a lot of feel for grip, and so he and I have talked about doing that together. And Monster this year decided they wanted to put us together as a team and have some fun at that event. So we'll do some fun marketing stuff at parties and events and stuff before the event. We'll go head to head to battle, for the win. And I honestly, just to be quite upfront about this, he's done that event many times, and I'm going there for the first time. So I'm going to try my hardest, but I'm up against some really stiff competition. I mean, he's actually beaten Loeb on a couple stages there before, so I think it's going to be a tough one for me.
Awesome. So to that point, I also noticed in the schedule you're doing 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 World Rallycross. That's the FIA version, right?
Yes. So, Ford has a big involvement here in the States with GRC and with the teams racing GRC. But Monster, my title sponsor, actually is a big sponsor, I think the title sponsor of the World Rallycross circuit. So they've been asking me for a while to come over there, and so has Ford. And this past year, 2013, there was several events in Europe for X Games that aren't happening this year.
Yeah.
So we were kind of missing out on doing a couple events over there. So, Monster and Ford really wanted me to go over and do a couple of the World Rallycross events. So I was able to fit 3 of them in, which is Norway, France, and Turkey. So I'm really looking forward to that. They just have some great tracks over there. GRC in here in America has been fitting their tracks into various circuits, NASCAR tracks, or or building their own like they did there in Vegas. So it's still sort of a bit of a work in progress, on the American tracks. But over in Europe, they've been doing it for so long. They have these circuits that are very specially built for the Rallycross. So I'm really looking forward to going over there and doing some of those circuits.
So I don't know whether I'm breaking news, but I'm looking at the Global Rallycross schedule. I'm sitting here in Manhattan in New York City. What is this Global Rallycross New York event in July? Where's that going to be?
I wish I knew.
Do we know? Do we not know, or do we know?
We don't know. I have no idea where that's going to be.
No kidding.
I love New York, so I can't wait to come out there and be able to spend a little time in the city and actually get to race my Rallycross car. It's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah, well, one of us needs to find out sooner than later and maybe break the news. That one caught my eye. You're also going to Detroit, Daytona. Let's see what else. Yeah, Detroit and Daytona caught my attention too.
Yeah, no, I think GRC has a very nice schedule this year, starting with Barbados, and then we have X Games, and yes, somewhere in New York sounds really cool, somewhere in LA, I think there's one in Seattle, Detroit, so, I think it's going to be quite fun. So
quick segue away from the specifics of racing. What we've done with some other guests is really talk about racing in general last year, so this is going to sound really kiss-ass, but because you have been such a dominant force in the business and marketing of motorsport, there are a couple of things, if you're okay, I want to chat with, and it starts with a question. How do you think sponsors see racing these days? I mean, we've got traditional racing that's doing its thing, and we've got this wilder stuff that you're a part of. You obviously have good relationships and sponsors, and I ask really for the audience and the kids to understand how this thing really works and how a business and a sponsorship develops. How do sponsors see racing, in your opinion?
Well, the main thing is we live in a day and age that the internet has become a force. 20 years ago, it wasn't a force in our lives, and today it really is. And the interesting thing from today to 20 years ago is, companies would do marketing and look at the analytics of TV exposure or magazine ads or editorial magazines, and you'd have all these sort of vague numbers that you would go by. But with the internet nowadays, you have people that can actually look at analytics that are direct numbers right off websites. YouTube, when there's a video put up, there is a number. It either got 1 view or 1 million views.
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt. I'm gonna interrupt because you got what, 17 million views on Gymkhana 6 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
There you go. Okay, I get your point.
So as a marketing person at some of these companies, they're responsible for getting exposure, and getting exposure means actually having numbers that support that. And so the internet has just, sort of changed the whole dynamics of exposure for all these different companies. So today, if someone's looking to sponsor, an athlete, they look at where the athlete is competing, what sort of exposure that athlete is getting from wherever they're competing. For me, Global Rallycross has a great TV package, so that looks very good for sponsors. But on top of that, they look very much nowadays at the internet, what sort of exposure an athlete is getting on a personal level or through their other sponsors or through their their own activation. So that stuff has just become more and more important nowadays.
So I was going to end with this, but I'll figure out the ending later because it's a pretty good segue. What do you, in my mind, what do you think fans want from racing? Because, talking to Ken Block, do they even care about competition? It feels like you've built yourself a career and a following and a sponsor attraction by having the car, the personality, and the action be the reason to watch. What do you think fans want these days?
You know, I'll explain the story in my mind of that a little bit in sort of a long way. And I apologize, I'll try and get through it as quick as possible. But when I grew up watching sports, watching baseball, football, basketball, watching car racing, you know, even watching ABC's Wide World of Sports, like, I didn't understand how much of business was behind all that. You know, at the end of the day, a basketball player is nothing more than an entertainer. A car driver is nothing more than an entertainer. Of course, we're all out doing the things that we absolutely love, but there's a whole set of money and industry that all goes behind it. And if that industry doesn't actually function in a positive way, well, then it goes out of business and it becomes nothing. If basketball wasn't fun to watch and they didn't produce a good TV show, well, it would just go out of business and you wouldn't have pro basketball. So it's funny, you know, several years ago, actually a long time ago, when I first, you know, started getting into the business of skateboarding and snowboarding, you know, really learned that if things weren't entertaining to kids, they just didn't care about it. You know, we were trying to sell skateboard shoes and T-shirts and that sort of thing, and we learned that, you know, you have to engage the consumer and make something entertaining or you're just not going to be successful. So I learned that kind of the hard way as a marketing person back then. But then even later in life, when I became friends with Colin McRae, I learned some funny things from him about actually being a race car driver, because he was so restrictive with the interviews that he gave, with things that he did, he had people all the time, you know, in Europe, like, hey, come drive for this TV show or come do this and that, because he was such a popular driver that, you know, he basically said, hey, at the end of the day, I entertain people. I'm an entertainer. The way I drive, the way I talk, the things that I do on TV, I'm an entertainer, but I'm not going to be a slut about it. I'm going to restrict what I do and do it in a smart way. You know, and it really sort of made me think. It actually taught me a lot sort of early in my racing career about kind of, you know, what you do and how you do it. And I really appreciated Colin in that way, because he and I kind of looked at cars in the same way, that here's this amazing piece of machinery that we can go out and use, but, you know, use it in a smart way and do it in a fun way.
But not to put words in your mouth, it sounds like it emanates from understanding what your audience likes, wants, and expects, not what you think is right. Am I?
Yeah. And the funny thing though is I grew up, you know, a consumer of all these things: skateboarding, snowboarding, rally, football, whatever. And I know what I like. You know what I mean? And I was such a huge fan of rally, and I know what I wanted to see from rally, that when we started making videos, it was easy for me to direct kind of what was in the videos because I knew what I wanted to see. And that's a little different than a basic marketing person that just graduates from marketing school, gets a job at an automotive company and is trying to do marketing plans. Well, that comes from a whole different school of thought. For me, it is that I love rally and I wanted to see certain things delivered on the internet as far as photos, video, messaging, all that stuff. And basically, I've just done what I'd like to see and what I wanted to see. And I'm just happy that the fans and everyone around the world has enjoyed seeing that stuff.
Going to go two more directions, then I'll let you go if I could. And I'm going to riff off what you said and talk about the business and the sport. And I don't want you to pick on these guys, but I'm going to use it as a stepping off point. Porsche just launched their Le Mans race cars, the 919 Hybrid and their 911 RSR. And they did, I don't know whether you saw it, that Porsche Intelligent Performance graphic on the two cars. Yeah. You saw that, right? So the question is this. The audience reacted interestingly. A lot of them were disappointed, thought it was too conservative. The question I pose to you, because of what you do and what you've done, what makes good design for a race car? There's a compliment in there, by the way. Okay, your stuff is kick-ass. So,
well, that's a difficult question. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to appeal to the consumer that you're trying to attract. So if you just compare me to Porsche, we're looking at two totally different consumers that we're trying to attract. There's a reason why my graphics look the way that they look, because our influence comes from a totally different place. We're trying to make product that appeals to younger consumers, and and that's where most of my sponsors want to be appealing to anyway. So there's a whole particular story and message that we go after when we make our liveries and we do our launch type stuff and make videos and T-shirts, all that stuff. It's very very particular in what we do. But Porsche, they create stuff that hopefully their consumers will like also, and that consumer is completely different from my consumer, more sophisticated, older, probably more affluent, has more money, that type of thing. And do they always do it right? I could disagree with that. I think there's a lot of those brands that get sort of lost sometimes in even understanding who they are. And I'm not really going to judge the Porsche stuff. I actually really liked it, especially the top-down view stuff. But it is what it is. And I think at the end of the day, I look at that car and I think, wow, that is a beautiful piece of design that looks absolutely function first, and then a nice graphic that's done well, that reads a certain way. And I love that stuff. I think they did a beautiful job, actually.
And actually, I agree. So I'm going to give you two specific questions, and we'll get off the topic. Do you do a design to make sure it conveys a literal message, or is it just good art is good art, and that'll be what will attract people's attention? And number two, do you think about how it reads on TV or from a distance versus up close? I mean, what goes into pulling it all together?
Tough question. A bit of all of that. Because I have brands like Hoonigan that have to take whatever's on the car and then make apparel out of. Same with DC, that we make shoes that then have to sell at retail, that if we put something that doesn't work on the shoes or apparel, then it's kind of a flawed program. So for us, it's always a progression every year. We're always looking at what's selling in the marketplace of where our sponsors want us selling. We want something that is hopefully going to stand out from what our competition's doing on the track and in the retail space. And we always want to try and be ahead of everybody else. You don't stand out and sell product and God, what's the right word for it? Kind of have your own unique personality if stuff just looks like everybody else. So there's a lot of messages that all get thrown in the pot, and we try and make the best stuff that we can. And it seems like my fans and all the consumers seem to like it too.
Besides the Ford Fiesta, are there any other race cars that you would want to drive? And I use the word drive versus race. You can decide if you want to go in any direction there.
Well, I'm a rally driver really at heart. So, stage rally at the end of the day is where I come from. It's what I'll do when I'm done with all this other stuff. And really, and I'm genuinely a Ford guy too. The RS200 and the Mark II Escorts are two of my favorite rally cars of all time, and so that's the type of stuff that I wish I had more time for, to really get out there and drive a Mark II somewhere. And I've never driven an RS200, so at some point I would like to spend some time in an RS200.
And you drive a Raptor Trax.
Yeah, well, I have a Raptor as a daily driver. I live up here in the mountains in the snow, and the Raptor is just an amazing vehicle year-round for me up here. And then Ford gave me this very nice Raptor with a cage in it, and I happen to have these mat tracks sitting around that I've had for a while, so we slapped those on this year and put together a really fun truck.
And I apologize for not seeing the video or remembering. Can you slide that thing a little bit or no?
Yes.
Really?
The old race car that I put them on before, I was able to slide around a bit. But the truck, it's about 7,000 pounds, but it does slide quite well. It's a supercharged V8, so it puts out about 650 horsepower, and it'll move that truck around quite well.
Let me try to finish this up with one question without sounding too ethereal. If I use the word creativity, how would you use that in terms of how you drive race cars?
Creativity for me is, it's not really something I apply only to race cars. To me, it's about my entire life. Like, creativity is where you get to have fun. And like, it comes from everything. I know it sounds sort of weird and cliche, but I sort of live it. Like, even sitting around playing with my kids, we try and always do fun and creative things as opposed to just watching cartoons, you know? And out walking my dogs or doing something there, we're always making fun little videos or photos or doing something fun with my dogs. You know, it's every step of the way. And for me, the race car racing is just one more aspect of my life that, you know, everything around the race car, from the design to technical pieces to anything that we can do, we try and be creative with. And even when I get in the car, it's always trying to have fun and really experience the car in new ways. And that, for me, comes from a sort of a creative angle.
So I'm smiling my ass off because you've actually led me to the place I wanted to go. Are you comfortable being an interrupter in motorsport? There's a bunch of these traditional thinkers, and here comes Kenny friggin' Block with everything you've done. You liking that role?
You know what? I think it's kind of funny because I'm just doing what I think is appropriate for what I like to do. I feel like sometimes, you know, people get so stuck in a rut of like, okay, you want to be a race car driver? Well, this is what you do. Yeah. And I always look at that stuff like, well, why? That doesn't seem like that much fun. Like, I want to do it this way, you know? And I think I get really strange vibes from people sometimes when I do certain things. And I think people either can't understand like where I'm coming from and why I do certain things, or it's just so out of the norm that they get annoyed because, you know, they thought that there was only one way to become a professional race car driver. And I think I've proved that there are other ways to do that. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a funny thing sometimes. I have some people that totally embrace what I do and really love it, and I have other people that hate it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, well, you do a better job than me, though, because you factor in the comfort of being yourself and being confident in that and then going your direction. Listen, I really appreciate the time you've taken with us. I know the fans are going to love it. I'm sure I'll see you somewhere, maybe all the way in July in New York City, but best of luck and thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and great questions. I enjoy talking about that stuff. So maybe we can do this again later in the year, and I'll have had a good year, and we'll have more fun stuff to talk about.
And no offense to Skype, but maybe we can do it face to face. We did that before, and I'd love to see you again in the studio.
Yeah, very good.
Or at one of the races. So we're out of here. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.